10 Amazing Human Behaviors in Apes and Monkeys. Given that apes and monkeys are our closest living cousins, it is not unexpected that we share some traits with them. We are obviously very similar to one another and also distinctly different when it comes to our bodies. Although we may still be quite a distance from a world like that in Planet of the Apes, the instances below suggest that it may not be such a wild idea after all. 10. Cooking. A bonobo named Kanzi, age 31, resides in the Great Ape Trust in Des Moines, Iowa. Additionally, he can use the instruments to cook food in addition to using them to catch it. Kanzi enjoys cooking hamburgers in a frying pan and roasting marshmallows. Of course, he doesn't create his own spatula, grill, or frying pan. Just how he employs them is all. He does, however, make his own fire. Before lighting a match and starting to cook, Kanzi will round the perimeter of his enclosure and gather wood. Yes, he does use matches. Kanzi was taught how to use them by scientists at his home. They claimed he was interested in learning after viewing a movie about how cavemen discovered fire. They also claim that he is very skilled at it, picking it up quickly and exercising caution to avoid burning himself. He keeps the campfire lit by flinging wood on it while standing a good distance away. 9. Using cash. 7 monkeys have mastered the fundamentals of money according to some researchers in Connecticut. They spent several months educating the monkeys on how to trade tokens for fruits like grapes, apples, or Jell-O. The monkeys eventually understood and were handed 12 tokens to use as they liked. But the monkeys aren't only acting in this way because they know they'll get food for it. The monkeys' spending patterns changed once the researchers were able to determine which products were in higher demand and when their prices fluctuated. For instance, a monkey could once purchase a cube of Jell-O or a bunch of grapes for 1 token. Later, kids may purchase a bunch of grapes or 2 cubes of Jell-O with 1 token. The monkeys were more willing to purchase additional Jell-O once they discovered this. The monkeys were aware that they had a finite supply of money and had to use it prudently. The majority of the time, the monkeys would choose the less expensive meal, giving them more purchasing power, the researchers discovered. 8. Prostitution. The Yale New Haven Hospital researchers probably never imagined the monkeys would spend the money on something that wasn't even on the menu when they started the experiment. One of the monkeys took one of the stolen coins and handed it to another in exchange for sex as soon as they learned how to steal. The monkey prostitute then purchased a grape with the token it had been given. Despite being unintentional, this demonstrated that the monkeys actually recognized the token's worth. Even though it aided their research, steps were taken to stop this kind of behavior from happening again. 7. Gambling. The Connecticut experiment is starting to sound more and more like Las Vegas and less like science. This time, the researchers chose to stick with grapes instead of the tokens. With one significant exception, they played 2 almost identical games but made one appear more favorable than the other. In the first game, a grape would be delivered to a monkey when it approached the table. If the monkey won the coin toss, he would receive another grape. He would still be able to keep the first grape even if he lost. Each monkey began the second game with 2 grapes. He would keep both if he prevailed. If he lost, he would only keep 1. As a result, the chances were identical. If the monkeys win, they receive 2. If they lose, they receive 1. Researchers discovered that even though the results were same, the monkeys chose to play the game in which they won a grape rather than lost one. Rhesus monkeys were the subjects of yet another experiment in which scientists showed them 2 lights. The monkey would get a specific amount of juice just by looking at one. It was risky to look at the other light since the monkey might get either more or less juice than the other light provided. Even after the gambling light's overall juice output was reduced during the trial, scientists discovered that the monkeys still chose to gamble. They argued that the thrill of victory more than offset the actual juice loss. The fact that the monkeys enjoyed the rush of taking a chance may help researchers understand how gambling addicts' brains function. 6. Head trembling. Great apes include bonobos, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, and humans. Numerous researchers believe that bonobos are the closest living cousins of humans since they share around 98% of our DNA. Beyond outward similarities, bonobos are known to communicate using a variety of body language and vocalizations. The most intriguing illustration is how bonobos may occasionally shake their heads at one another to express disgust. Darwin thought that this habit was ingrained in us as infants. Infants that liked breastfeeding would lift their heads up, while those who objected to feeding would shake their heads. This practice persisted into adulthood, which is why we now equate nodding with a favorable response and shaking our heads with a bad one. This hypothesis, however contested by some, might help to explain why bonobos appear to use it in the same way. 5. Use of tools. The use of tools was one of the major turning points in human evolution. Similar cognitive processes have recently been seen in monkeys. Even in the wild, many people have been observed employing various tools for a variety of purposes. For instance, the capuchin monkey has recently attracted a lot of interest from scientists after it was discovered that it uses pebbles to dig holes and break nuts. In the meantime, it has been seen that chimpanzees break off twigs, strip them, and stuff them into holes to fish out termites. Even the sticks they use vary depending on the task. Chimps will use a longer, stronger stick and stay farther away when searching for ants in order to prevent getting bitten. This is essential because it demonstrates that they are aware that some tools are more suited for particular jobs than others. It's also vital to keep in mind that they frequently choose branches from shrubs or trees rather than just locating suitable ones on the ground. This fundamental ability displays means-end reasoning. 4. Transmission of culture. A society conveys new information through cultural transmission, also known as cultural learning. It was long believed that humans were the only animals capable of developing culture, but this is no longer the case. One animal's learned behavior may be passed on to the other members of its group, entirely altering how that group functions. The Emo narrative is the best example of this. In the 1950s, Emo, a macaque, rose to fame among psychologists all around the world for the innovations and impact she brought to her troop. She and her group were fed grains and sweet potatoes by researchers while they were living on the tiny island of Koshima in Japan. Emo brought the potatoes she was being given down to the sea and cleaned the sand off them, despite the fact that macaques usually avoid water. This not only meant the potatoes were cleaner, but the salt water also improved their flavor. After some time, almost all of the members of her troop started washing their potatoes before eating them. The monkeys gradually lost their fear of the water, went deeper and deeper into it, and eventually began to play and swim in it. Later, Emo had another groundbreaking notion. She would take the grains they were fed and dump them in the water. It would be much simpler to separate the grains from the sand since the grains would float and the sand would sink. Sign language. 3. The first creatures that can exchange somewhat complicated signals with one another and, more significantly, with humans are apes. The best example of an ape that has been trained to sign is Project Coco, which is still active. When Coco, a gorilla, was a year old, she started learning sign language. Since then, she has learned to communicate with over 1,000 signs and understand roughly 2,000 English words. She understands spoken English and communicates via signing in return. Coco's abilities are disputed by some academics, who contend that in order to receive rewards, she simply understands signs rather than language. The project's experts vehemently disagree, claiming that Coco once requested a kitten for Christmas. She was initially given a toy cat, but she detested it. She was finally given the opportunity to choose a genuine cat to keep as a pet. Coco used her sign language skills to express her outrage after the cat was struck and killed by a car. 2. Use computers. Apes for Apes is an orangutan outreach program that uses iPads to help keep orangutans stimulated. These iPads are used as a form of mental enrichment for orangutans, which are highly intellectual apes, to keep them from getting lonely or melancholy. Richard Zimmerman believed that when the iPad first came out, orangutans would love to play with them. The apes now enjoy them and tend to stick to playing kids' games while occasionally viewing nature documentaries. They must have the zookeepers hold their iPads since they have a tendency to lose their cool and shatter the screens. Here is a video of an orangutan using an iPad. Some macaques were taught to play a game in which they had to determine whether an object on screen was sparse or dense based on its density. The monkeys received treats for good guesses, but they had to wait a little while for the following question, and macaques detest waiting. They also had the choice to pass, in which case there would be no waiting penalty. The monkeys answered questions they felt confident in but avoided the more ambiguous ones, researchers discovered, showing that they doubted themselves in the same manner that we do. Although it might not seem important, it was for the researchers. These results implied that they have high self-awareness levels. 1. Fishing. Even though fishing requires an entirely other degree of skill, monkeys still go out and catch fish. A Bornean orangutan decided to try spear fishing after witnessing humans do it. While he wasn't able to spear any fish that were swimming freely, he did learn how to use his spears to catch fish that were caught in the fishermen's nets that he was imitating. Macaques had more successful fishing expeditions than their giant ape cousins, who were no match for them. Some of these monkeys in Indonesia have been seen capturing fish with their bare hands since 1998, despite the fact that they don't use equipment while they hunt. That's for now. We appreciate you for being here. View more our channel videos.